This sitting is resumed. Prior to the suspension of lunch, we are in standing finance committee. We shall revert to such.
Standing Finance Committee resumes. Continue with Head 31, Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology. We continue with questioning or comment from the Honourable Member of the Opposition, Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Probably just a couple of further questions at this point. I wanted to find out from the Minister and her team as to the level of concern that may exist with them with reference to matters of security and privacy of information. If we are expanding the digital platform, creating significantly more so a digital economy, with all that's happening in the world, with threat to cybersecurity and all of that, what is the level of concern that exists with the ministry? I would like to hear them perhaps speak to that, and what plans may be afoot to counter that type of thing. The other question I had to ask, Madam Chair, is to the level of satisfaction with reference to the buy-in from the private sector, from private interests in Barbados, as we create a more technologically sound environment. What is the level of buy-in? We're going to be significantly impacting life in the marketplace in Barbados in several respects. And if the private sector is not sufficiently on board with this, then we're going to end up spinning top in mud sometimes, wasting resources. So I would like to know how satisfied they are with where we are, with where the private sector is today in terms of the buy-in to their vision. And the third question, the digital economy will significantly change the world of the market immediately around us and further afield around us, as has been expressed here today in the vision outline. It will empower people, individuals and businesses and institutions, and even the state machinery will be better empowered, but it also will expose us to greater vulnerabilities. Capital likes to dominate labor. Capital is in the business of profit making. The disposition of capital in Barbados, especially foreign investment capital, is to try to discourage organized labor from being organized. An expanding digital economy will change relationships, will expose the laboring class to some vulnerabilities. Is there a plan, is there some consideration being given to this in terms of how we may have to change the legislative architecture that provides certain social provisions, socioeconomic provisions for the working class? I hope I'm clear. It's in essence trying to say the world in which capital and labor will relate to each other will change. Capital dominance now exploits labor to a large extent in Barbados. Foreign investment capital tends to discourage labor from organizing itself. As the digitization of the economy empowers people, it will also expose the working class to some new vulnerabilities. And we have to have in place some social protection platforms in the interest of the working class. Hold on, I hope you understand me. I tend to confuse myself sometimes.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I'll take the questions in the order that you presented and perhaps invite some of my colleagues to chime in as well. On the matter of cybersecurity, you are absolutely right. From the time we start going online, it creates a different level of concern around cybersecurity. And I want to reassure this Honourable House and the people of Barbados that this ministry is taking cybersecurity quite seriously. You may recall that at the very outset, that was one of the areas that I indicated was going to be a priority for us. And you may recall also from last year, that was a priority for us, and we have made some significant steps in that regard. No country talks about its security because, as you know, in a significant way, because as you know, when you move to a digital environment, cybersecurity now is not just something that you relegate to technology. It becomes a national security issue. And therefore, we have elevated it to that level. And some of the work that we are doing in cybersecurity, and this is as much as I will say about it, is in collaboration with our Barbados Defense Force and other organizations that have responsibility for such. That's as much as I will say at this point in time. Because that just shows you the level of importance that we have placed on that. We also understand that we have to build the capacity and the competence that is within government and outside of government when it comes to detecting, protecting, and responding to those kinds of threats. We are currently in the process of building that capacity. We have identified the standards to which we would want our team to be trained and skilled, and we are diligently working with the necessary agencies to upskill our people and bring them to the levels of certification that will ensure that we have better capabilities within. Additionally, we believe that people, when it comes to cybersecurity, people are their best firewall. So as we start to increase public education, we need to help the citizens become the firewalls, where because they know better and they understand, they are able to better protect themselves and therefore protect anyone who will be a part of a network to which they belong. So I do want to reassure the Honourable Member, Madam Chair, that we are taking this seriously, and I have stated to the extent that I can some of the steps that we are taking to ensure that this matter receives the level of priority. And we have also dedicated some aspects of our budget to this, at least the estimates we are requesting to this matter. Second question was about buy-in from private interests impacting life in the marketplace, the fact that when we start to work in a more digital environment, it has these kinds of impacts. When we talk about private interests, you will notice that much of the work that this ministry is doing, including an Honourable Member mentioned the Smart Barbados and how we're building out that vision and all of the initiatives that arrive therefrom, is that we're doing it in collaboration. We're not seeking to do it alone, whether we are doing it with the private sector in some cases or with government, or with the third sector, or with the nonprofit communities, I mean. We recognize that it isn't just being buy-in, whereby you have this idea and you get people to buy in, but it's about people being invested from the beginning so that they're in on the ground floor as you're starting to think it up, think through it, work through it, and decide what it will take to do so. And so how do we feel? Do we believe that the private sector is ready? I think this is a journey we take together, and we meet each other where we are. And some are far more advanced than others. You're seeing some disruptive technologies now in the market. Cave Shepherd's Card is coming out there and doing some very interesting things in the payments market. You had M-Money that came out and started to do some other things. So you have a number of disruptive technologies right here, homegrown in Barbados, and if they're not homegrown, they're certainly active in this market, seeking to do some very interesting things. Barbados has got a fintech sandbox, one of the few in the world for the experimentation with financial technology. So I'm saying to you that, yes, you're absolutely right, not everyone seems to be gung-ho, but we have enough good examples that we can see that Barbados is making the effort and our private sector is beginning to step up to the table, and our ministry and our government in general is working collaboratively with others.
Honourable Member for St. Michael's South.
Madam Chair, with your leave, I didn't think I heard a response on the matter of
Third one, go ahead.
potentially social protection initiatives for the working class as we go forward, and the new threats that would come, or the new advantages, if there be, that would be created for capital over labor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am sure the minister that has responsibility for labor will have a very firm position on this, and I shall
With all due
However,
respects to the minister, Madam Chair, I couldn't get a word out of the minister.
However, one of the wonderful things about the digital age is that as much as we may take it from the perspective that capital can take advantage of labor, what is also interesting is that as labor workers upskill themselves, reskill themselves, and future-proof their skills, they are now more marketable, which means they have power to move. They have power to move within, they have power to be able to sell their services elsewhere, and so I think that this industry, if we choose to see it that way, puts tremendous power in the hands of labor to be able to control the narrative.
So you're saying then that we need to think in terms of social protection mechanisms for capital as opposed to labor?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's mutual benefit, and if we could be open-minded, we will be able to see how all parties might be able to leverage this time to their advantage.
Thank you, ma'am, but I'm sure my older friend from St. Michael East will not be satisfied with that answer.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Michael's South.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you very much, Minister, for your leadership in this new and exciting ministry. I have a question. You know, they say we're in the age of the fourth industrial revolution. I get nervous when people talk about these revolutions because I don't recall us benefiting so much from the first, the second, or the third. So, this being the age of the fourth industrial revolution, I just want to know, I mean, technology is changing every day. We're seeing now the Internet of Things, the shared economy, all kinds of advances in AI. And I know there are some young people, and not so young people, in Barbados who are now doing very creative things, very imaginative, I mean, wildly exciting things. And the internet this new age has the capacity either to bridge the gap between those who have and those who don't, or to widen the gap between those who have and those who don't. And I just want to be sure that whatever we do, and so this is my question really, how do we ensure that given this age, that the average person could benefit from these new technological advances to the extent that it does not serve to perpetuate the divide between those who have and those who do not have, because technology could either be a gift for some or a curse. And I just want to make sure that I know I have very creative young people in my area doing some things, and I just want to make sure that if they come up with some ideas that they get to benefit from it, that Barbados as a country gets to benefit from it, and that some other country or person, as in keeping with these revolutions, would not swoop in and take the benefit of their hard work. So how do we protect our young people and the persons who you would consider to be the average person in this new age?
Madam Chair, if I may.
You may.
I'll answer very directly. By having a policy of inclusiveness is one of the things that this ministry has done. You will notice that all of the programs that this ministry have put out there, they're all income neutral, which means it's not for anyone from any particular economic bracket. You will notice, ma'am, that on the, well, you would not know this, but the Game Changers program, of which I mentioned earlier, there is a legal component that is included in that. And that is to ensure that the intellectual property is properly managed once the creativity comes out from that program. So we are building in the kinds of services, like legal services, into the kinds of programs that we're building, where there will be some kind of intellectual property that may be produced from them. Thirdly, we are managing a very closely structured process, as in through the tech accelerators and others, where it is not a loose arrangement, but the parties that engage, they engage under certain understanding. And so it is about built-in protection from start, as opposed to doing it as an afterthought after something has been produced. In addition, Madam Chair, number of the programs, I'll give you an example. I am talking about the divide. We, Barbados, this government, supported the Caribbean Girls Hackathon. The Prime Minister herself, in fact, was at the event which was held at LESC, where the program was judged, where there was judging. Girls are a cohort that will oftentimes be excluded, particularly from STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and we ensured that they would be able to have a place. But beyond that, let me tell you where we have where we go across income lines, where they're not those who have and those who have not. The first school that won was Dighton Griffith. They were in first place. St. Michael was number 2. Third place was Springer Memorial and Ellerslie, who joined forces to come out. We have promoted the programs across public and private so that we recognize, again, we are crossing what would be considered the income divide. We have students in our science programs. Our science camps, our science and technology camps are free, which mean, again, we are ensuring that those persons who would be less likely to have access to the know-how and the wherewithal, that they are protected. When we did DigiHacks last year, which is preparing children for cyber and the use of technology, 40+ students from the children's homes from across Barbados were engaged, and we did training for the aunties in the children's home. Again, making sure that we are willful and we are deliberate in being inclusive of persons from across all areas. And then when we do have something where there could be some exploitation of intellectual property, that we are building in a legal framework and the structure that will allow us to be able to protect from start.
You mentioned the children from the children's homes. Just as a point of interest, did that ever include the children of the government industrial schools? Because we seem to tend to forget that they're
I will
there.
ask Mr. Charles Cyrus of the National Council for Science and Technology to respond to that.
Wonderful. That means yes.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, I don't think the children from the government industrial school was involved. We look at the children's homes, Lily Court, McNamas, Allenton Horsey. Those were the 3 centers that the students came from.
Was it just an oversight? I wonder. Because I mean, we have young children in there, 12, 13, 14, that are going to eventually become a part of the society again. Will they be leaving the industrial schools without the knowledge to equip them, without the opportunities for even the game changers? A lot of these children are actually bright. Might be naughty, but they might be bright. Maybe it might be worth looking into that area as well. We still have to be inclusive.
It was definitely not an oversight, but it was where we were able to get persons responding immediately to this. I think what is going to be good, though, is that we have the opportunity in this financial year, 2020-2021, to continue to extend that net and perhaps include persons as well from the areas where you are, from the industrial school as well. So thank you very much for, you know, raising that as well.
Okay, Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central.
All you had to say, Madam Chair, all due respects, is the epicenter of Christchurch. I would accept that. I want to thank the Minister, the Honourable Minister, for taking the baton and running with it. As a former athlete, she would understand the literal sense of that, but certainly in its metaphorical sense, the changing and redefining the way of life in this digital and technological era that we live in. And I want to ask, because I want to reflect on the 24th page of our manifesto, which speaks to a Youth Innovation Award. I just want to ask the Minister, what is the plan to roll out this award, which will seek to unlock the creative, scientific, technological talents of our young people, as we seek to provide a group and a workforce and a reform and redefine young cohort that are able to exist and transform our country in the way that we know how they can. What is the plan for this award, and how long do you think that this country will have to wait till we get this award on board?
I'm going to ask Madam Chair, the director, the acting director of the National Council for Science and Technology, under whose remit this would fall, to answer to respond.
Thank you very much, Minister. Madam Chair, actually the Youth Innovation Award is linked to the Game Changers Award. In this fourth cohort, we have tied the Youth Innovation Award to the Game Changers, because the Game Changers Award, we are in the first pilots, so to speak, we are actually targeting students at the sixth forms. Our target has been students at the sixth forms, including the Barbados Community College and the Samuel Jackman Prescott Institute of Technology. So we're targeting 16 to 18. We want to build out innovation. We're looking at the gaming industry, as the minister mentioned earlier. All right? So there's a link between the Youth Innovation Award and the Game Changers Award, which has already started. We had our first meeting on Saturday at the Barbados Community College. We have 21 teams from all of the secondary schools. Yes.
Honourable Member for St. James South.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to the team from MIST. Let me tell you, I'm really very proud of the mandate that you have and the work that you have been doing, because I recognize that your success will really transform Barbados. I just have two questions for you. One pertains to what was just asked by the Honourable Member for St. Michael's South. And my further question about the engagement and protection of people with products and so on. There's some, like in my constituency, I had one young person who had developed the Easy Save program that you probably see at a couple of businesses around. Youngster. And he has been guided and mentored by a more senior manager. I have another one who has done an app, and he talked to me about it like it was like writing an essay, you know, and I was really deeply impressed. My concern is, how does your ministry, what kind of flow is there for that person to engage in ministry? Because young people tend not to engage government very much because they don't know how it works, and it seems to be full of fuddy-duddies in their mind, and they don't know how to engage the space to get their product or service thing. So if there's a framework in place so that some of these products that these young people develop could be then commercialized properly and used in not only dealing with Barbados, but has value abroad.
I believe that government has a number of programs that assist entrepreneurs. And there are a number of programs, whether it's through small business, or whether it's through youth entrepreneurship, or whether it's through any of the number of other programs out there, where I believe there would be some kind of support for those persons. We tend, in our ministry, for the programs that we run, we tend to create the whole ecosystem around them. And part of that would be a referral process, a simple referral process at that particular time. If it does not fit within the scope of the program that we have in place, it is through referral to some of government's other services. And there are also some services that are not in government, but they're nonprofit sector. I know 10 Habitat and some others, they do tremendous work as well. So it is referral if it does not fit within the scope of the package program that we have within the ministry.
But do you have a process where young people who have something that they think would be useful to government or solve a problem, do they come straight to you? What do they do with their idea? What I find happens is that they try to find whoever they know in government to ask a question and so on. But I'm just asking if we have a process by which they can engage and demonstrate what they're doing and see the possibility of being included in what is happening.
I'm going to ask the project manager for the public sector modernization program to respond to that. Because currently there is a situation where that individual did a demonstration of a particular application that they have, and they did it, in fact, to Minister King, as well as to the Prime Minister herself. And through that kind of engagement, was then able to have it done in used in a test situation. So I'm going to invite Mr. Rodney Payne, sorry, who is the project manager for the public sector modernization, just to speak a little bit about how we were able to support that.
Thank you, Minister. Madam Chair, Rodney Payne, project manager, public sector modernization program. Thank you, Minister, Honourable Minister, for your question. The Chief Archivist is the head of our digitization committee, and which has responsibility for records management and ensure digitization. Mr. Christian Payne, the young man, he was engaged to use his app in a pilot project to transcribe the written record to a digitization format. It's an early program, so therefore the young person was given the opportunity to see how this would work for the archives department. And in an iterative process, once that program, which is artificial intelligence, continue to learn, the expectation is that it can be used within other departments. So to answer the minister's question, they're given the opportunity, and once it's rolled out, they'll be able to use it, and then they can be directed to the Corporate Affairs and Intellectual Property Office, which will give them the information in how to protect themselves with regards to their new application.
Okay, thank you. Let me make a suggestion that we also have a number of young people in the diaspora, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade is seeking to find where our diaspora are and the skills that they have. And we actually have a number of them who have done IT and have worked with some of the best companies in the world with their skills. So I want to be able to make a connection between them and you, so that things that they do or can help with, that they can then be a part of the wonderful thing that you're doing. So I'd like to make that offer. The last question has to do with your telecoms unit. I see here that you've completed an audit of the quality of service. I don't know how much you can share with us, but I know utilities and there has been a problem for some consumers in Barbados. And I just wondered what progress you all were making on that, because I know that's another important part of your work and what you do.
All right, thank you, Honourable Member, for that question. I'm going to invite Mr. Clifford Bostic, who is our Chief Telecommunications Officer, acting, to respond to that question.
Pleasant good afternoon. Thanks for your question. We did an audit back in April 2019, and it was to confirm some of our beliefs in the ministry as to what the issues were with the quality of service in mobile. The audit unraveled 5 areas that are of interest to us. The first one was interference, and that's where signals from the operators were interfering with one another. The second one was coverage. There were some areas in Barbados where you cannot get a signal, so you cannot make a call, you cannot connect to the internet and so on via mobile. And the third area was the time it took for calls to connect. So you dial a number and you'd be there waiting 15 seconds after no connection. The third area was dropouts or disconnections. You're on a call, you're driving, or you're probably walking around the home, and then the call just drops. And if the fourth area was things, for example, throughput, what we call throughput, the speed that you could upload and the speed that you could download. And the final area was where you're on a call and for some or no reason the call just drops out. So what we did was we engaged an international consultancy firm to actually come to Barbados, an independent agency, which was recommended through the International Telecommunications Union. And they sat and they did what customers in Barbados would replicate. So they did drive testing, where they connected all 3 networks simultaneously, and they drove around the country, all through the highways and byways and the various communities. And we discovered that for interference, one of the resolutions was to have custom-built filters on the networks, mainly on rooftops and areas where there is co-location, where more than one cell provider has antennas and equipment radiating to our communities. In those areas, there were about 35 sites that had issues. The operators ordered custom-built filters and installed those. To date, there are 22 sites that have been completed, and the other 13 are in process of being completed. And any other new sites will be installed with filters to stop the signals from interfering with one another. And the second thing we did when it comes to interference was to increase the guard band. In other words, increase the distance between the frequencies so as to avoid interference across the country. In the area of coverage, and I believe most of you know where these areas are, it's St. Andrew, it's Christchurch, it's St. Michael, all highways, parts of St. Philip, parts of St. Joseph, practically all over Barbados. There are areas where you just can't get coverage. So one of the recommendations made and were adopted and committed by the service operators was one, to go and tune those antennas. Let's make some adjustments to those antennas so that as you move from one cell site to another, you wouldn't lose connectivity. In other words, you wouldn't have dropouts. Another area was to improve the number of cell sites in Barbados, and for this, they've had to get town and country planning approval and approval from persons who own land and buildings to add more cell sites. And the other one was to upgrade the actual services being provided through these cell sites. In the area of call dropouts, we know what way that takes place. If there's no good coverage, the call is going to drop out. If there's issues with capacity, where there are lots of customers on cell sites in particular areas and along the south coast into Warrens and Bridgetown and the west coast, those are the areas where lots of customers are calling to make voice calls or to connect, to browse the web, to watch streaming like this event taking place today. So those areas require more bandwidth, more capacity to meet the demand for services. Then in the area of timeouts where the call just won't connect, again, it's capacity issues, and the operators know exactly what they needed to do with their networks to build out capacity and improve on the services. With call dropouts, it's about the same thing, just fine-tuning the network. And when it came to the area of capacity in terms of internet connectivity, what's the download speed or download bandwidth, how much information you can download, how much information you send up to the network. This has been an issue with us. In Barbados, we are a place where the demand for bandwidth, the demand for data is high. The moment you increase that bandwidth, we eat it up because we are busy with social events, religious events, learning, doing business. We demand a lot of bandwidth. So our infrastructure has not taken step with the demand. So we are working with the operators collaboratively to make sure this is fixed in the future. Fixed now, and it continues to be a sustainable quality. So for the future, one of the things that we have started to do is we've had conversations with the Fair Trading Commission, as the Minister said earlier in her opening remarks. We are actually collaborating with them because they take care of consumer protection, and what the consumers receive is or get as is a result of how the network is set up and what metrics we put in place. So we're talking about quality of service standards. We're going to set the standards so that once the network standards are set, the customer standards can be set about the same time, and we're working with the FTC to do just that. We're going to move into the area of setting a framework, a legislative framework to deal with legislation and regulation, because you've got consumer protection, you've got utility regulations, and you've got the Telecommunications Act, quality of service regulation and legislation. So we are working together with them. This week you should see, fingers crossed, the cabinet paper come into cabinet for approval for us to proceed in that manner. We believe once we set that in place, we will then have not just the commitment of the service providers, but also their action, and we would know when the quality of service is not going to be what it's supposed to be, and correct that before we have to go through years and years and years of poor service. And we're not going to stop there, because there are fixed services. Your fixed telephone in your home and your businesses, your internet at home and in your businesses, as well as IPTV and other services that are going to come down the pipeline. That's going to help us. The only way we're going to survive as a digital environment is if we have the right infrastructure in place with the right standards and frameworks in place that will make sure that as we use more data, as we have more demand on the capacity that's available, that there's a framework for which this can be improved in a consistent and sustainable way.
Thank you very much. I am looking forward to the resolution of those things, because I live in one of the 13 black holes that they haven't fixed yet. So I would appreciate that.
Minister, I'm sorry Mr. Payne left before he could comment on something the honourable member would have said. I was interested in hearing when you spoke about the young entrepreneur with respect to his program, and you went through a process before you got to his being protected legally for his intellectual property. Could you go over that flow again? Because I'm meeting people that have wonderful ideas but are even scared to go to government for fear of somebody stealing it, as they will put it. Could you go over the process that he has to go through again with me, please?
Thanks, Madam Chair. What I'm saying is that the persons are given the opportunity to use their development, software development app, whatever, within the different departments. They will start, then it improves, and then you'll be able to use it in another department. For example, the same Christian Payne, he will be working with archives in the first instance. And then the program that he's developing, Laura, it also has a component to recognize voice, as it's a learning AI. And he would be able to give a demonstration to the registration department who will be interested in such a app to deal with within the course. There's also the opportunity to work with the Inter-American Development Bank through a program called Lab, where the young persons, young individuals can present their apps to them and see how they perform. Even if it doesn't perform well, they give them the opportunity to try again, and they will give them the opportunity to be trained as an entrepreneur and also allow them to understand what intellectual property is with their products. So the ministry, with that partnership with the Inter-American Development Bank and Lab, will invite the young persons to present their programs, their services, products, and apps so that we can go through that process.
So all this time they're not protected? In other words, was to stop somebody in your ministry, sorry to say, or whoever ministry, from stealing my idea? Is there some provision for protection until the legal framework is put aside? Just trying to understand.
Madam Chair, if you'd permit, I'm going to ask the other Rodney Taylor, who is in charge of the Tech Accelerator. There's a structure within the Tech Accelerator that handles this very same situation. So I'm going to invite Mr. Rodney Taylor to come and complete that answer.
Thank you, Minister. Madam Chair, the program that the Minister referred to, which would encapsulate not just this young gentleman, but other innovators in Barbados, is the Barbados Tech Accelerator program. And we are modeling that after the Scotland's CivTech program. What it is, it provides a framework for young innovators. We start from the point of view of the challenge. What is the challenge or the public issue that we're trying to solve? Whether it may be in sanitation or it may be in public transportation, all right? Because, you know, there are many ideas out there, but how do we turn them into viable businesses? And that's what the Barbados Tech Accelerator is about. It starts with the challenge, and then it allows and it provides the opportunity for young innovators to address those challenges, to come up with ideas, whether it is through a mobile app or some other use of technology to address that issue. And it also imparts skills such as entrepreneurship, and it also brings, in conjunction with that, it brings investors on board as well. So it is a comprehensive program that we are again modeling after Scotland's very successful CivTech program, that would bring them from ideation through to an actual solution with the full protection in terms of intellectual property as well. And that is something that we're rolling out early in the new financial year.
Thank you so much for your indulgence. Honourable Member for St. Philip West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, you mentioned earlier that there was some work going on with the Chief Archivist, and as that falls underneath my ministry, I would wish for any member of the team to be able to talk a little bit about the engagement and express if there are any pros and cons that we should know about in terms of where that program is going, how it will impact on the safekeeping of records.
Our Permanent Secretary is going to respond.
Madam Chair, Honourable Member, as part of the modernization program in the public sector, we are seeking to roll out an electronic documents and records management system. By its nature, we're dealing with the records within government, and that falls under the purview of your ministry and the Chief Archivist. A digitalization committee has been set up. She's the chair of the committee, and she'll be responsible for the actual rollout of the EDRMS and the digitalization of records within the public service. So your ministry plays a critical role in the success of the EDRMS.
Honourable Member for St. Peter.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I may have missed it, but I wanted to find out. I'm speaking from behind the column for the minister's sake. I should have shifted. But as it relates to wider Barbados taking advantage of the unfolding ICT space, my question is, what provision is being made for ordinary people in the far-flung corners of the country to be able to benefit from that in terms of access to technology? What, if the minister or her team, some member of her team could speak to what concrete steps are being taken to ensure that ordinary people with good ideas, or even curious people, especially young people, are able to access the platforms that are available or that could become available and use those platforms to develop ideas, to explore ideas, and to maybe generally just be curious and explore that curiosity.
I'm not sure what's being asked. Is the question the platforms that are being created for government, how are young people able to access them? Or is it for all of the services government is putting out there?
No, but that doesn't,
ordinary people.
That doesn't clarify. For clarification, I'm referring to like access, basic access to internet, one, or maybe access to devices. To be able to use those platforms that you began to speak about.
Okay. Thank you, Honourable Minister. We recognize that there are some persons out there who do not have internet in their houses. There are some people who do not have computers. There are some people who may not even know how to use it. One of the programs that we have put in place is called Digital Ambassadors. And for a number of people who were, let me go back before I go forward. The digital ambassadors are these young people who are deployed near home and in community to support everyday people who maybe don't have the confidence in using the technology, who don't have the technology in their homes. What we do is we deploy them in the resource centers and the community centers. And they are there for a period of time so that people can then come and they will be able to help them until such time. This is something we will continue throughout. We trained last year 90 digital ambassadors. 72 actually graduated. We've deployed about 38, and they worked during the TAMIS to bring a number of people who were in precisely those situations. I'm not comfortable with the technology, I don't know how to use it, I don't have a device, etc. And they were in community centers, libraries, and resource centers across Barbados over a period of a couple of months. And they registered hundreds of Barbadians onto TAMIS to get them registered on their number. In fact, today I think the honourable member from St. James North mentioned that in post offices today, there are out there deployed today seeking to help people with their certificate of character who would be interested. So one of the things we are doing is making sure there are human resources deployed in community and near their homes with their own part of helping to raise the digital intelligence in their own communities. And they're providing hand-holding support. They're not just sharing what is being used or how to do it, but they're actually holding the hands of those people through the process of actually doing, so that from the beginning of the engagement to the end, they can say, aha, now I have a TAMIS number, aha, now I have registered on Easy, aha, now I have done something. So their support is practical, direct, hand-holding in communities.
Could I just follow to ask, that sounds like the use of existing platforms. What I wanted, if you could expand a little bit more on a youngster with just an idea. Are there plans to have labs set up somewhere someplace where a youngster can go with an idea, but without the access to technology. And I'm not sure if the digital ambassadors do that, but is there a plan to have that? I'm asking because there are a lot of young people across the island who, and I've been finding out this more and more as an MP. When I thought that everybody had a cell phone or had access to internet, I'm realizing that there are quite a number of young people who don't. So that's really where I'm going with the question. Any plans to have labs, these innovative spaces where people can go to actually work on some idea that they have?
Innovation Center was one of the areas that was discussed by Mr. Charles Cyrus. They do not exist right now, but we have started the process of conversation. In fact, just last week, was it Wednesday, we were down at Harbor Industrial Park looking at buildings. Then we were up on that road near Springer Memorial looking at studios for those who are doing content. So we have now been scoping out where are the facilities around Barbados that we may be able to use to set up innovation centers. And the concept of an innovation center being just this one place is not what we're thinking. We're thinking that you may have people who want to do content for television over yonder. We may be, and you have a studio that already exists. So we need to do an inventory of what spaces we have in Barbados that could work for this. And over yonder might be where they do robotics, and that's the Innovation Center for Robotics. And over here is where you have that Innovation Center for Artificial Intelligence and doing some interesting things. And over there is where you have an Innovation Center for apps. So the intention is not just necessarily to have this one place, but there may be several places where we use the facilities that Barbados has to be able to create almost hotspots for particular types of technology. We're not there yet, but we have started not only conversations, but we have started looking around Barbados, and we're putting the inventory of those spaces together as we move forward.
Honourable Member for St. James Central.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My question really is to any member of the team. There is an issue which is a little bit dated, and about which I believe there had been some progress, but I'm seeking to give you the opportunity to provide the country with a statement that brings some clarity of purpose and direction for the average person out there who is a the clerks at the table have their technological challenges, ma'am. I'm glad it isn't one of us, because you would have been well within your rights to put us out. No, I was saying, ma'am, that the average business person out there uses his or her cell phone. A small business person, small and micro business people especially are on my mind now, tend to use their cell phone as the way in which they relate to their clientele, their client base. And the challenge really is that very often, and I count myself among these cases, you become a little bit disaffected with the quality of service of your service provider. In the context of a marketplace where there is choice, which is where we are, it is anticipated that there should be an ease of a person being able to move from one service provider to the other without losing his or her cell phone number, because that really has become a part of your identity. If you've had the cell phone number for a long time, your clients know where to find you and how to find you by that number. The challenge now is we have heard that this is something that obviously should be corrected, but where are we specifically with that process? Because it is very important to the small and micro business people, certainly in my constituency, and I would expect that we are not unique in St. James Central, but that this is a problem for small and micro business people across Barbados.
Thank you, Honourable Member. This relates to partly to the matter of number portability. And the honourable member may recall that I took a paper to cabinet and we did in fact pass the necessary regulations as it relates to number portability. And I'm going to invite Mr. Clifford Bostic, our Chief Telecommunications Officer, to provide the honourable member with the update he requested.
Good afternoon, Chair. Thanks for your question, Minister. Where we are today is that we will be restarting the local number portability project in April. We came across an issue where one of the providers had asked us for some leniency in terms of funding for the last 3 parts of the project, and that is the testing, the marketing of the product, as well as the customer service aspect of local number portability. What that means is that the networks have been set up with the ability to do porting from one of the service providers to another, and there are 3 of them. What has to be done now is the testing, and as well as the marketing of number portability, and the final step is the customer service aspect of it, so that each person in Barbados would know what's the correct process importing their number from one customer to another. There have been quite some errors made in the Caribbean islands when it came to this product, and we do not want to go through that, because we want to make sure that once we launch number portability, that every person who wants to port their number has the right process, has been well trained, and can do the porting without any issues. Thank you.
If I may, by way of a further follow-up for specificity only, I think the average person, again, out there, having heard that this is part of government's plan, and if they're anything like me, is anxious to be able to benefit from the plan, would want to know whether there is a specific end date in mind, or is this being left open-ended? In other words, have we set a line in the sand where we say this is the point by which it must happen?
Mr. Bostic would have just indicated that there were some special requests made of us, given the particular different circumstances of some of the players in the market. And I'm trying to be as careful as I can in terms of saying that. And we thought that everyone should have reasonable opportunity to be able to benefit from this at the time, and so we gave an extension. It is certainly our intention not to end the 2020-2021 financial year not having made this happen for the people of Barbados. It does require collaboration, and it does cost. And so we have to make sure that everyone is in a position to be able to benefit. When I say everyone, I'm talking about all of the telecommunications players, so that there's enough of a level playing field as we can to make sure everyone can benefit.
Thank you. I have one inquiry, really. Would your ministry get involved with it seems to be, and it's growing in Barbados, people applying for and obtaining jobs abroad, but working from Barbados by the internet, for instance. Is your ministry going to be a part of that, given the climate at which we're in, where jobs are not readily available for some people out there? Are we going to bring in that, where we can get online jobs or anything like that? Or that doesn't fall under you?
That, Madam Chair, does not fall squarely within the remit of our ministry, but we imagine that through some of the programs that we are designing, it will happen organically, but not that is something that we are specifically mandated to do or that we would be involved in at this time.
Thank you. Nobody else. Would you like to give your wrap-up, please, and ask that the headstand part?
Madam, I will do my wrap-up. I believe that as I am a member of the other place, I might not have the authority to ask for the head to stand part in this honorable house.
This is true. My bad.
I would have to rest on the good,
agreed.
nature of my friends. But I just want to say that I want to first of all thank the members of this honorable house for the questions that they posed. I think it gave us an opportunity to share a bit more than we could have in our opening remarks. And we trust that it is understood that the kind of Barbados that we want to create, and one where we're focusing on in 2020, 2021, and will certainly continue to focus on after that, is one where things work, where lines are shorter or they're gone, where people waste less time, bus fare and gas, trying to perform simple transactions with government, where unproductive time that is spent away from family and business trying to get things done with government. We all believe that these are things that we would like to see go, and we believe that making the transition to digital and creating the kind of environment for Barbados that this ministry is supporting, that will be the way forward. We have a long way to go, Madam Chair. We have a long way to travel to digital transformation, and the journey has begun. We have begun. While we all want things to go faster, I know that. I have heard the honorable members in this house, I've heard the public. We want things to go fast, including more services online and made easier. One of the things we have to understand, though, is that we have to put the proper infrastructure in place first before we can go as quickly as we would like. Many of us in here would not construct a house and go putting on the roof before we have made sure that the foundation is sufficiently solid. And so there's much infrastructural work that we still have to put in place as a government in a number of different areas, and we will continue to build that foundation even as we make those little steps towards putting other services online. There's a bit of legislation that also has to be put in place in terms of creating the kind of environment that we would like, and we will continue to be a part of that, and that includes the overhaul of the telecommunications legislation and the fact that there's no convergence between broadcasting and telecommunications, and that has significant implications from a legislative perspective for the things that we do. There is 5G that is coming into play, and that has implications for how we manage the waves that are up there, the spectrum that is up there. That's the type of legislation that has to come into place. One of the honorable members, the leader of the opposition, mentioned cyber security. That is a different type of legislation also that we also need to start beefing up and putting in place. And so we recognize that it's not just infrastructure and legislation, but we also have to upskill our public service. We have to build their confidence, and we have to reorient their minds to citizen care, not just public service. We need to do research to ensure that Barbados is benchmarking against the best, and that we're not just benchmarking to copy, but we're benchmarking to leap over and indeed be able to deliver at world-class levels. We need to build not only the foundational infrastructure to fit what government wants to do in terms of doing digital well, we also need to make sure that we are building the kinds of platforms and we are taking care of the protection of data and critical assets. In general, there's a lot to be done, and the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology, we are certainly gearing up to be able to do much of that work, and we understand we cannot do it alone, and we are reaching out for the collaborative relationships that will enable this. We look forward to the continued collaborations across government with the private sector and with the third sector as we seek to move towards a more digital economy. And with these words, I thank you very much for the opportunity to present these estimates on behalf of the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology.
Chairperson, I beg to move that Head 31 stand par.
Question is that Head 31 in the amount of $14,141,075 stand par. All honorable members, pardon?
Second.
All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 36, Ministry of Energy and Water Resources, 28,556,277.
Madam Chair, I beg leave to call my support system from the ministry and my SOEs to join at the
So
table.
granted. Honourable Minister, we invite your opening remarks.
Madam Chair, the last year has been a most interesting year in our ministry. It is well known by now, both in Barbados and toward the rest of the Caribbean and the wider world, that Barbados has adopted the ambitious target of becoming the first small island state to reach 100% generation of electricity by renewable energy, and we intend to do this by 2030. Since we've made the announcement of our grand plans, a number of territories, a number of countries which had targets ranging from 2050, 2045 have actually come down, but the next most ambitious one is at 2035. So Barbados's renewable energy and carbon neutral push is perhaps the most ambitious in this hemisphere, is definitely the most ambitious in the Caribbean. And my ministry, Madam Chair, most people who pay attention to our ministry believe that I'm the Minister of Water alone. And most people don't realize that there are other aspects and statutory companies that fall under my ministry, and these include BNOC, Barbados National Oil Company Limited, which, although it is named the National Oil Company Limited, it is more operating as the Barbados National Energy Company Limited because they've also branched into the area of renewable energy. The National Petroleum Corporation, the Barbados National Terminal Company Limited, and the Barbados Water Authority. Madam Chair, with respect to water, in the area of water, the water has been a very, very challenging one for us because we inherited a system, and I can't even blame this one on the last 10 years. We inherited a system that was created in the empire when Britain was an empire. A number of our pipes and our infrastructure are 100 to 150 years old. And we are now experiencing the perfect storm with drought conditions that we've not experienced for the last 60 years, the worst drought in 60 years, declining reserves in our aquifers, and we also have aging pipes. So even when we manage to get water into the pipes, between 40 and 60% of that water is unaccounted for in terms of billing. So in addition to being the ministry charged with the task of transforming Barbados' energy landscape, we also are the ministry charged with bringing our water infrastructure kicking and screaming into this third decade of the 21st century. Madam Chair, what have we done? Over the last year, Barbados has advanced its renewable energy generation capacity significantly. As we go through Barbados, you will see solar panels on most government institutions, solar panels on schools, on community centers. The Light and Power has invested very, very heavily. That's our vertically integrated monopoly at present. They've invested very heavily in solar generation, also battery storage, and they're about to embark in the area of wind energy as well. Many businesses are also utilizing their roof space for solar generation. The National Oil Company Limited has a very ambitious plan as well to cover 30,000 roofs in Barbados within the next couple of years. So why is this so important to us? Why do we need to get there? Apart from the altruistic aspect of it, where the Caribbean as a group has one of the smallest carbon footprints in the world, but yet we are the ones most on the front line of the climate change effects. We all know what is happening with the frequency and intensity of the storms in the hurricane season. Once upon a time, for there even to be a Category 5 storm was a rare occurrence. Now Category 5 storms are every single year, and they're hitting land every year, to the point where they're considering creating a new category of storm, Category 6, because the intensity of the storms has become that significant. So we quite clearly bear the brunt. We're on the front line of the war that is climate change. We've seen what happened to Dominica a couple years ago. We saw what happened to Bahamas last year, where one weather event can wipe out decades or generations of progress. It can wipe out the economy of a country in one. We have been very lucky. But the reality is that at some point in time, a significant weather event is going to hit Barbados. So while we know that one will eventually hit us, it does not serve us well to sit down and wait on it. What we have to do is put ourselves in a position where we can bounce back quickly when that event happens. And they call that resilience. I hate to use that word because it's almost becoming overused in the environmental sectors and the climate change sectors. But we actually need to become resilient as a country. There are areas in Dominica that still don't have electricity since the storm. Right now, we have all of our eggs in one basket. The Barbados Light and Power is the monopoly utility. They have their major generation plants at Spring Garden and out by the Garrison. And these plants are both located within 200 meters of the shore. So the reality is that if a serious hurricane hits us, then those plants stand to be wiped out, and that is the majority of the generation capacity in Barbados. So if that was to happen, we would not be done. We complained. We had an instance last year where we had 2 days of disrupted electricity, and that was a major blow for Barbadians. But if we had a major weather event, we would not be without electricity for 2 days. We would probably be without electricity a lot longer than that, because all of our electrical generation capacity is consolidated in what is perhaps the most vulnerable area if a storm was to hit. So we are looking at distributed generation of electricity. We're in the process of negotiating new licenses with the Barbados Light and Power. And these licenses, while we accept that the Light and Power, the utility, owns the grid, the majority of the grid, and they should still have a greater share of the transmission and distribution capacity or the business associated with transmission and distribution, it cannot now be monopoly generation in Barbados. We have to look at distributed generation of electricity. What I mean by that is, as opposed to all of it being centered in one area, you have pockets of distribution. We're looking at independent power producers. We're looking at other people setting up solar farms, and that also helps to enfranchise Barbadians, because the